cousin asked me to babysit her kids while she worked nights, but eventually I learned she wasn't working at all and was secretly meeting with someone else. Then my uncle blamed me for not telling him earlier, even though she swore me to silence. When my cousin first asked me to babysit her kids, it sounded simple enough. She told me she had just picked up some night shifts at the hospital and, since her schedule was all over the place, she needed someone she could rely on to be with the kids. I did not even think twice, since we have always been close, and her 2 kids, they are good kids. To be honest, I figured it would be a few hours here and there, perhaps help her get back on her feet. But pretty soon, it was almost every single night. She'd text me in the late afternoon, saying something like, "Can you come over tonight? I'm working until 3 a.m. And I'd just agree. I did not want her to feel as though she was alone in this, and especially, I actually enjoyed hanging out with the kids. They would tell me about school, we would watch movies, make popcorn, and sometimes they would fall asleep on the couch next to me, and I would take them to bed. It was exhausting though. I was in college at the time, so balancing school, part-time job, and then long nights at her apartment started taking a toll on me. But I just kept telling myself, she's family. You do this for family. I didn't pry when she first told me she worked nights. She'd be back at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and have a slight scent of perfume instead of that bitter, antiseptic hospital smell. But I didn't let myself consider it. I just figured maybe she stopped off to freshen up on the way out, or that I was half asleep and dreaming. She'd thank me, give me some gas money, and say she'd pay me back somehow. The kids always expected me to be there, and I did not want to disappoint them. Then little things started to not add up. One night, I noticed that she came back in heels. Now I know nothing about hospital dress codes, but heels at 4 a.m. after a nursing shift? It didn't add up. I said nothing though. I told myself that it wasn't my place to judge her choices. The night that changed everything for me was a Saturday night. The kids had gone to bed early, and I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when I saw her car pull up much earlier than usual. It was not even midnight. I peeked through the blinds, expecting her to walk in tired and drained, but what I saw was her walking and smiling with a man I had never seen. They embraced for some time, and he kissed her cheek before getting back into his car. She walked to the kitchen door like nothing was wrong, and when she came in, she was pretending like she had just worked some tireless shift. She even let out this over-the-top sigh, dropped her bag, and was like, "Ugh, what a night." I was just staring at her, not trying to make any expression on my face. My heart was racing, not because I had caught her in a lie, but because I did not know what to do with the information. She had trusted me enough to leave her kids with me, but now I had found out that she was lying about where she really was. Later that night, as she was getting ready for bed, I came close to saying something. The words were right on my tongue. Who was that guy? But she caught my eye in the mirror and said softly, "Thanks for bailing me out again tonight. I don't know what I'd do without you." And I swallowed the question just like that. I said to myself it was none of my business. She was an adult. Maybe she had her reasons. Maybe it was a one-off. But the guilt started building up afterwards, because every night I watched her children, I knew she was not at work, and every morning when she came back, I knew she was lying right in front of my face. Weeks passed, and the cycle kept repeating itself. I'd see little hints, new lipstick at 2 in the morning, laughter on the phone when she got in, even a glimpse of her hand in hand with the same guy when he dropped her off around the block. And every single time, I said nothing. She never admitted, and I never asked. I was saying to myself that I was just honoring her privacy, but inside I was aware that I was being pulled into a secret that I had no desire to keep. It all blew up when my uncle, her father, showed up at her home one evening when I was there with the kids. He was angry, his voice already shouting when I opened the door. "Where's your cousin?" he bellowed. I stuttered out a reply about her being at work, but he shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "No, she's not. Don't lie for her." That's when I realized he already knew. He suspected, maybe even had proof, and now I was trapped in the middle. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there paralyzed. He gazed at me, his disappointment written on his face, and said, "You knew, didn't you? You've been covering for her all along." My throat parched. The kids were in the adjoining room, laughing at some cartoon, unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. I did not wish them to be disturbed by it, but neither did I know how to defend myself. I hadn't asked for the secret. I hadn't volunteered to keep it, but in his eyes I was guilty. I was the one who could have told him earlier, the one who could have put an end to this before it got out of hand. And the truth was, he wasn't wrong. I'd known for weeks, and I'd been silent. That evening, after he had left, I sat on the sofa and felt hollow. My cousin came home shortly afterward, and when I told her that her father had come by, she went pale. She begged me to be quiet, her voice breaking, tears filling her eyes. "Please don't tell him the details. He'll never forgive me. Just please." And I nodded, not knowing what else to do, but inside something stirred. The weight of her secret had gone from uncomfortable to unbearable. I couldn't stand to look at her kids without feeling this crushing guilt, like I was failing them somehow by staying silent. And I couldn't stand to look at my uncle without seeing the hurt in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I'd betrayed him too. And that was just the beginning of it. Things changed between my cousin and me after that night. On the surface, she acted like nothing was different. Same sporadic text asking if I could watch the kids, same smile when she came home, same quick, "Thank you," before she headed to her room. But there was this underlying tension, like we both knew I was now carrying something heavier. I couldn't unsee the look on my uncle's face when he realized I'd been laying low. It haunted me. I replayed it in my mind during class, at work, even when I was trying to fall asleep. That stinging mix of disappointment and hurt, it lingered. And each time she asked me to pick up an extra shift, I felt myself torn between loyalty and honesty. One evening when the kids were at the kitchen table doing homework, I tried bringing it up casually. I said something like, "Your dad came over the other night. He was really upset. He thinks you are lying to him." I was talking softly, not accusatory, more like testing the waters. She tensed for a moment, then gave me a blank stare and whispered, "I said don't say anything. You can't, okay? You don't know what's happening." Her voice was a slashing whisper, close to desperation. I felt like pushing back, telling her how much it was consuming me. But then her daughter tugged on her arm needing assistance with math. And just like that the moment was gone. I let it slide again. But I began to notice the children sensing the tension as well. They'd ask me questions that I didn't have answers for. Why does mommy leave every night? Why was grandpa upset? I'd grin, divert their attention, or inform them that their mom was working hard to take care of them. And it hurt me, lying to them like that. They deserved the truth, or at least more than the partial cover stories I was providing for them. Every time I tucked them into bed, I couldn't help but think what they would be thinking about me years later, if they'd remember these nights and realize that I was a participant in the deceit. My breaking point came on a Friday night when she had left earlier than usual. The kids were in pajamas, brushing their teeth, and I watched her leave dressed up as though going out to a fancy dinner. She gave me this guilty little grin and said, "I won't be too late." Hours passed. Midnight. 1, 2, 3. No word, no messages. The children were asleep on the couch, and I was just sitting there watching the clock and getting more and more furious. At 3:30 a.m., her car finally pulled in. I looked through the blinds once more, and there he was, same guy I'd seen before. They kissed in the driveway this time, no trying to hide it, no shame. When she came inside, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Really?" I asked, my voice hardly above a whisper but shaking. "You're just doing this right in front of me now?" She paused, key still in her hand. "What are you referring to?" She tried to play innocent, but I cut her off. "Don't. I saw him. I've seen him before. You're always making me promise not to say anything. And meanwhile your dad is screaming at me for keeping my mouth shut. What am I doing here?" My voice cracked on that last line, and for a second, I thought maybe she'd break down, defend herself, say something that made sense. Instead, she just sighed and put her purse on the counter. "I didn't ask you to babysit so you could pass judgment. I asked you because I needed help. If you can't handle that, you may not want to be here." That hurt. Despite everything I had done, the sleepless nights, the lies, the guilt, she reduced it to my being judgmental. I felt like screaming at her, telling her she was using me, that I hadn't signed up to be her cover story. But then her son stirred in the other room, and I swallowed it. I went to drive home that morning and cried in my car before going into the house. My uncle showed up again the next week, again when she was still out. I tried to block him at the door, but he pushed his way in. "Where is she?" he demanded. I admitted she hadn't returned yet. He paced in the living room, hands on his hips, muttering to himself. He turned on me then, his eyes fury-filled. "You've known for a while, haven't you? You knew she wasn't working. You let me continue to believe her lies." I tried to explain, stammering. "She asked me not to say anything. She made me promise." But he cut me off. "And what about me? I'm her father. Don't I have a right to the truth? Don't her children deserve better than this?" His voice broke on that last sentence, and I was engulfed in guilt all over again. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because he was right. I'd been protecting her at the expense of everyone else. I watched him stride out, the door slamming behind him, and for the first time, I started to think that I'd made a huge mistake in keeping her secret. When she got home later, her dad had already called her. She went pale, shaking her hands as she scrolled through her phone. Then she glared at me, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "You told him, didn't you?" she spat. I frantically shook my head, saying, "No, I didn't. He figured it out himself." She didn't believe me. She blamed me for turning against her, for ruining everything. And something inside of me just snapped. I said, "You ruined this yourself. Don't blame that on me." It was the first time I'd ever fought back, and I could see how much it shocked her. Her mouth opened to speak, but there was nothing there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, thinking about how quickly everything had collapsed. I'd started all this out wanting to be there for my cousin, to be there for her while she worked nights, to be there for her kids. And now here I was, caught between a father and daughter, accused of betrayal by both of them, and drowning in guilt I didn't deserve but could not shake. And I knew then that things needed to change. Those subsequent days after that fight were torturous. I did not even bother checking my phone, since each time my cousin's name flashed, I would feel queasy inside. Sure enough, she kept texting me as if nothing had happened, asking if I could visit and babysit. And the worst part? I still acquiesced. Not because I was willing to help her again, but because I was worried about the kids. They were all innocent in all of this, and if I suddenly pulled back, they'd be the ones left in the dark, even forgotten. They needed someone predictable, someone who would care about them, and at that point, I couldn't just leave them, no matter how much I wanted to escape the chaos their mom had gotten me into. But with every night I spent there, I became more resentful. I'd sit on the couch after they went to bed, staring at the door, waiting for her to come home. Sometimes it was 2 in the morning, sometimes later. Always dressed up, always glowing like she'd just been out having the time of her life. And every time she strolled in, she'd shed the same old tired routine, slamming down her keys and muttering something about a long shift. I no longer even bothered to hide what was on my face. I was done pretending like I cared about her fibs, but she never said a word. She just flowed by me as if I saying nothing meant I approved. What made things worse was my uncle. He just kept calling me, trapping me on questions. Where was she last night? Who is she with? What are you hiding from me? And I never had an answer. If I said everything, I'd be lying to him outright. If I clam up, he'd just get angrier, more convinced that I was a part of the cover-up. Either way, I was the bad guy. I felt as though I was teetering on this tiny ledge, and whatever I did move to, someone was going to be hurt, and probably blame me. But on one Wednesday evening, the whole situation all came apart. The kids were in bed, and I was sitting on the couch half asleep around midnight when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I got up to peer through the blinds, and there were 2 cars rather than my cousin by himself and this guy. My uncle's truck had pulled in behind hers so that she was blocked in. My heart just gave out. I just watched as he got out, his face all thunderous, and ripped the door open on her side before she'd even gotten a chance to slip in. The man she'd been with was white-faced. He growled something, then moved back towards his automobile. But my uncle wasn't even listening to him. He was screaming at my cousin, his voice shaking with rage. I couldn't quite hear each word from inside, but I caught bits of it. Lying to me, lying to your children, having your cousin get involved in all this trouble. I stood there bewildered, torn between going into the room or hiding in the living room with the lights off. The kids stirred upstairs, one of them calling for their mom, and my heart hurt because they didn't know what was happening. Lastly, my cousin charged past her father and inside. She slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled against the wall. She saw me standing there, wide-eyed and pale, and she growled, "Don't say a word." Then she stomped on up the stairs, muttering oaths. My uncle hung around outside for a while, pacing along with his truck before finally leaving. I just sat on the couch afterwards in silence, my hands shaking. I had never been as trapped as I was then. The following day, she barely acknowledged me. She simply handed me some money and said curtly, "Thanks." No eye contact, no explanation. I wished I could scream at her, tell her she was ruining everything, but the kids were running into the kitchen wanting breakfast, and I couldn't do it around them. I just walked away, driving home crying, and wondering how much longer I could carry on. I avoided her texts for the next week. I told myself I was done. I had a life, my sanity to uphold. And then one evening, there she was on my doorstep. She was exhausted, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't even say hello, she just erupted. "I need you." I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or weep. She needed me? After everything she'd done to me? I let her in large part because I didn't want the neighbors to hear about the argument that was brewing. She flopped down on my couch, wringing her hands, and finally blurted it out. She hadn't been working nights for months. She'd met a guy on the internet, and things had gotten heavy. She swore he was a good guy, that he treated her better than anyone had in years. "You don't get it," she told me, tears springing to her eyes. "For once, I feel seen. I feel important to someone. I needed this." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and for the first time, I felt forced to see her as a human being so starving for attention that she had hung on to something that she thought would rescue her, and I wanted to sympathize with her. I did, but all I could think about was her children, waking in the middle of the night for her, staring at me like I had wronged him, my dad, losing sleep, lying my head off, carrying this secret until it destroyed me. So I said to her, "You might feel seen, but your children do not. They do not see you in the dark. They don't see you when you really need them, and I'm the one who's paying." My voice cracked on those last words, and she looked at me, white. We just sat there for a long time, frozen. At last, she whispered, "I didn't mean to involve you in this. I didn't know who else to go to." I shook my head, staring down. "You didn't believe me. You ambushed me." The room grew quiet again, And at that time, I realized something had been irreparably broken between us with no hope of it being fixed by apology. That night, after she had left, I lay in bed and gazed at the ceiling, and for the first time, I started to think about boundaries. About how sometimes loving your family does not equate to lying for them, or dying to protect their lies. Sometimes it equates to stepping back, even when it hurts, even when they might hate you for it. I had no idea yet how I was going to do it, but I knew this one thing for sure: I could not continue on like this. Something had to give, and fast. The change happened sooner than I expected. A couple of nights afterwards, following our discussion in my apartment, I received another message from my cousin asking me to look after the children. Initially, my desire was to just ignore it, but she continued with, "Please, just one more time. I promise I'll explain everything." Despite my better judgment, I gave in. I vowed that it would be the last time, that I would spend the evening figuring out how to set boundaries without leaving the children on their own. But when I got to her home, something felt different. The children were subdued, like they picked up on the tension in the air. We did it all by rote. Homework, tea, stories in the evening. But the whole time I was working out what I would say to her when she returned from work. I had rehearsed it in my head all day. That I could no longer continue covering for her. That I adored her children, but this lying was too much. That she needed to take responsibility for what she was doing without me being a party to it. She came in later than she ever did, way past 3 in the morning, and when she walked in, I knew immediately she had been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her shoulders slumped. She didn't even try to do the long shift routine this time. She just put down her keys on the counter and said softly, "He left." I stood there, shocked, not knowing what to say. She fell onto the couch and hid her face in her hands. "He said he couldn't take the drama anymore. My father, the kids, the lie, all of it." She choked, and for the first time in years she didn't sound like a woman hiding the truth, but rather like a woman who had been pushed to the edge and forced to face it. I sat across from her, my chest tightening. A part of me was this incredible urge to put my arms around her, tell her that she wasn't alone. But there was another part of me that was resentful still wounded by everything she'd done to me. I took a breath and clarified, as gently as I could, "This has nothing to do with him. This has everything to do with your children. They need you, and you can't use me to fill in the holes anymore. I couldn't be the one holding everything together when you're out there looking for yourself." She looked up at me, her eyes puffy and red. "I know," she breathed. "I've destroyed everything. I thought I was doing something for me, but I was just running away." We didn't say anything for a long time after that. I think both of us knew that things could not return the way they were. She needed to change, and I needed to step back. I told her that night, "I'll love those kids forever, and I'll do everything I can to assist them, but I don't have the ability to stay in the role of your cover. It's not healthy for me, and it's not healthy for them." She nodded slowly, sobbing. "I see," she said, although her voice had the sound of still trying to convince herself. The next morning, I was called by my uncle. I was not going to pick it up, but then I remembered how much damage my silence had already caused. I picked up the call, and he asked directly, "Is she still seeing him?" My throat was tight, but I forced myself to speak the truth, or what I could bear. "She was, but now it's over. She understands that she needs to sort things out, and I cannot keep finding myself in the middle. Sorry that I did not inform you sooner." I was trying to protect her, but I ended up making it worse. There was an unspoken pause on the other end before he finally said, "I wish you'd trusted me, but I get it. You were trying to do the right thing by her. Just don't ever put yourself in that situation again." His voice was softer than I had expected, close to exhaustion. I hung up feeling heavier and lighter both at once. I took a step back for the next few weeks. I no longer agreed every time she asked me to babysit. I focused on my classes, my job, my own life. It wasn't easy. The kids would call every now and then, asking when I was coming over, and it was difficult to say no. But I recalled that they required their mom more than they required me, and she, slowly, reappeared. She cut down on outings, remained home in the evenings, even started talking about therapy. I don't know if it was because the boyfriend left, or because she realized how close she had come to losing everything, but something in her shifted, and for the first time, I permitted myself to hope that maybe she actually would change. But even that, the relationship between me and my cousin never quite went back to what it had been. There's this kind of unspoken space now, a wall erected that we both refrain from crossing. I don't blame her anymore, but I don't let myself get pulled into her secrets, either. I do love her though, but I don't trust her anymore like I used to, and perhaps that is okay. Perhaps that is just what you do following something like this. In hindsight, what I realize is the worst of it all was not so much the night sweats, or the lying I had to do. It was losing myself in someone else's story, how her choices dictated my life. I thought I was doing the best I could, but what I was actually doing was avoiding the harder truth, that sometimes, to assist someone you love is to not enable them. It is to stand back and let them deal with the fallout, even if it is painful. I see the children all the time, still, but now it is on my schedule. We will go to the park, get ice cream, watch films at my place. They still hug me so tightly all the time, still ask me questions about things I don't always know the answer to. But at least now I can be sure that I'm telling them the truth. And when I look at them, I tell myself that they're stronger than I think they are. They're going to grow up and form their own opinions about their mom, about me, about all that's happened. And that's okay. All I can do is remain steady in their lives without losing myself in the process. The whole experience has imparted this silent realization that family is not about carrying each other's secrets. It's about loving one another so much that you're willing to tell them the truth, even when it's grotesque, even when it teeters on the verge of shattering the bond. I wish I knew this earlier, but I'm glad I learned it now. And I guess that's the best I can derive from the whole thing. The realization that at times silence is akin to loyalty. But in reality, it is just another method of letting someone disintegrate.